uncovered government emails, uncovered actually by citizen journalist Brett Sears. The emails expose a chilling truth. The Canadian government, under the leadership of Dr. Syrett Pam, subjected vulnerable Inuit infants to a failed and unethical drug trial without parental consent. It's a scandal that stretches back decades. This latest revelation raises uncomfortable questions about the dark history of medical experimentation on Indigenous children in Canada. And Pam Killeen is with us once again. She is a health and wellness coach, co-author of The Great Bird Flu Hoax, and host of the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen podcast. Pam, welcome back. How are you?
I'm great, but I'm very disappointed by this story and our government and what they've done to these poor children without their consent, the consent of the families, the consent of the children. Of course, they're babies. They can't give their consent. They've just been used as guinea pigs in this experiment. And it's just illogical, Richard, how and why this experiment ever took place in the first place, because the drug that they used, the drug that is in question, has been shown time and time again to be useless. And so,
sorry, let me just jump in. In here. This is an RSV monoclonal antibody program administered to Inuit infants in Nunavik and Inuit territory in Quebec without proper consent or transparency, and the drug was developed by AstraZeneca, intended to treat respiratory infections. Just go ahead. I wanted to get some context there for listeners.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, these are children that are born premature, and so they're considered to be very high risk for this lung infection, RSV. And so what they're doing is giving these children 5 injections during the months between October and March. So they get 5 injections, 1 injection per month. And it's been shown time and time again that this drug does not work. It's a monoclonal antibody. And there is another counterpart. There's another drug, and it's monoclonal antibody. It's a fraction of the cost of this particular drug, which is called by a brand name Synagis. And so instead of using the drug that is less expensive potentially, it's called Beyfortus. It's again a monoclonal antibody, a fraction of the cost of Synagis. They went ahead and they were using this injection 5 times a month on these poor, vulnerable children. And to the tune, I mean, it's hard to imagine how expensive this drug really is. In 2015 and 2016, in Canada, we spent $43.5 million on this drug in 6,300 children. $43.5 million were spent on this drug to allegedly prevent children from going to hospital with this infection. It's a drug that has been shown that it is ineffective. I've come across terms like useless, that this drug is useless, yet they went ahead and they were testing this drug on innocent children in northern Quebec.
And again, was this study conducted by Public Health Agency of Canada? In other words, Dr. Syrett Pam's agency?
Yes, apparently it was. It was all under the guise of the Public Health Agency of Canada. And I don't know what ramifications are going to come from this expose that has been published on Rebel News, and now we're talking about it. But I'd like some more accountability on behalf of the Public Health Agency of Canada for conducting this trial. I mean, if you look back in history and you see that the tuberculosis vaccine trials in the 1930s and 40s, where they had 600 subjects in that, these were, again, Indigenous populations in southern Saskatchewan. There were 600 subjects in that trial, and 20% of them died in that particular instance. And yet they knew that if these children would have been put on healthier diets, healthier lifestyle, and so on, that could have helped prevent tuberculosis. And that was part of the study. They knew that these children didn't have good diets and didn't have potentially healthy lifestyles, and yet they wanted to inject them with vaccines. And this is the same situation here, where they're using these monoclonal antibodies to try to duct tape a situation where these poor children are probably born in an environment where they're not getting the nutrition they need, and the mothers didn't get the nutrition that they needed. I'm a big proponent of the work of Dr. Weston A. Price, who traveled around the world, and he studied the native diet. And the long and the short of that is that once you take the native diet away from the natives, that's when you're going to start seeing infectious diseases like RSV or tuberculosis. So unfortunately, the Canadian government makes it very difficult for these people to eat their native diets. So they're going to have weakened immune systems. Let's just make sure that they can return to their traditional lifestyle and their traditional diet. That's more of a tangible solution than injecting them with 5 injections over the winter months and basically putting these kids at risk for anaphylactic shock, convulsions, lowered blood platelets. I mean, there's all sorts of side effects to this particular drug that they were using.
So if it's proven that the Public Health Agency of Canada was aware of the risks and they continued this program without informed consent, would this not be considered criminal wrongdoing? Could Dr. Theresa Tam be prosecuted?
Well, somebody has to be accountable for this. I don't know if the parents of these children are going to come forward. I haven't seen any evidence of that. But there has been some advocacy on part of Rebel News. So we'll see if somebody does pursue potentially charges against Public Health Agency of Canada. We can't allow this kind of medical experimentation to continue in a first world country. I mean, we've seen this happen in India, Richard, where thousands of people have died because of experimental drug trials in India. And they're exploiting the poor people that need the money. They're put into these trials, promised money, and unfortunately, the consequences can be fatal. And it seems to me that we're doing it here in Canada as well to our most vulnerable of people. And this has got to stop, and I would like to see criminal charges laid, yes, but I don't know who's going to have to do that. The parents of the children potentially, or maybe local health authorities in the area where it took place. But Canadians need to be aware of this situation, and they should be outraged.
Pam Killeen is a health and wellness coach, co-author of The Great Bird Flu Hoax, and host of the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen. PamKilleen.com. Pam Killeen, KILLEEN.com. PamKilleen.com. Just give us a summation or a tease for what the Circadian Reboot podcast is all about.
Well, I hope I have solutions there for people who are looking to strengthen their immune system naturally by using Mother Nature's. And this is what's happening, of course, with these poor children and their mothers, is they're not getting enough fresh air and sunshine. It's not only just about diet, but we need to boost our immune system. We need to get the fresh air and the sunshine. And unfortunately, people are living indoors away from the natural sun and looking on screens for many hours of the day. And this behavior doesn't support a healthy immune system. So I wish Theresa Tam would educate our most vulnerable and teach them about healthy diet and lifestyle before injecting them with these dangerous drugs.
All right. Again, that's the Circadian Reboot with Pam Killeen podcast, PamKilleen.com. I'll put the link in the episode description when we publish the podcast tonight. Thank you as always, Pam. Have a great rest of the week.
Thanks, Richard.